Mark Hillman,
Here.
Angie Skillings. Here. Carl Palmer,
Here.
Abe Smith,
Here.
Dominique Stewart,
Here.
Rachel Henderson,
Here.
Dale Dalkey,
Here.
Here. Forum, let's stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In our mission statement, the school district of the Menomonie area, by embracing the unique needs and using the strengths of our diverse community, is dedicated to preparing all students to become lifelong learners, caring individuals, and responsible citizens.
Thanks, Rachel. So the highlighted youth for the summer and highlighted youth that is in board docs tonight is all about summer school. And I appreciate Stacy Lee. Mrs. Lee is the principal at Downsville Elementary. She also ran our summer school program beginning on July 1st. Mrs. Lee, is there anything you want to share with the board in terms of highlighted youth?
The biggest highlight is that we had that 400 kids, both of us. We are graded by the free transportation and food for all students. We have more high school volunteers in the building this year than the previous years for the COVID, so it was nice to see a lot more volunteerism and the bond between the younger kids and the older kids, especially some of those athletic things and gardening, and so it was nice to see a lot of high school involvement.
I also think it's worth pointing out on the slides, and if you haven't had a chance to look yet, this is available for anybody in the public who wants to go on and look at board docs, and we'll share this out this week. But so we had 6 weeks of summer school, and we had a bunch of new classes, gardening for beginners, expressive arts, and reading explorers are a couple. There's some terrific pictures from the pets and vets class, including a very large snake.
to plus students in the Menomonie School District, and for your unwillingness to give into the demands from a very small but vocal minority who wishes to derail these efforts and remove books that speak to LGBTQIA plus experiences from library shelves. Too often, you, our leaders, only hear from committed activists on the fringes, so we want to ensure that the views of many more parents and individuals in our community to support these views of action. So as parents and community members, we want our libraries to carry a wide range of materials that reflect the lives and experiences of all students in the diverse groups that make up larger society. We support the rights of parents and guardians to choose books that are appropriate for their families, but we do not believe that any level of government should dictate or censor reading materials. We also trust our talented teachers and library professionals and their ability to choose materials that are age appropriate. We appreciate that leaders in our district agree as you upheld the reconsideration committee's decisions, and we urge you to continue to stand for these values and to work to create a more inclusive school district. Currently, here and in many communities, the fight about books in schools is focused on parental rights, within quotes, purposefully ignoring the rights students have to a well-rounded education that teaches them not what to think, but how to think. That is what including books by and about those from marginalized genders and sexualities, as well as people of color, does. Not only are young people given windows and mirrors into our globe and the people inhabiting it, but they're given the chance to talk about the tough, challenging topics in a safe way. Any attempt to remove books on these topics teaches young people that the way to handle these topics is to avoid them. Oftentimes, young people cannot avoid these topics because they are the ones living them. And for those who do not share the experiences of these stories, the safest way for them to engage with these topics is through literature. We are really grateful that our district leaders have retained challenge books, giving students access to information that will help them grow, develop, and think for themselves. And although we still have a lot of work to do to make the most inclusive district possible, we appreciate the efforts that are currently being made by you, and we will continue to support you at these efforts. Thank you very much. I appreciate the effort that went into circulating the letter, and it's really nice to hear from you. I fully agree that keeping free books in our school is really important. All right, on to revenue and expenditure reports for the month of July.
As you'll note there, for the month of July, there is not a lot of revenue recorded. It's zero for all the funds, Fund 10, 21, and 27. At the bottom in the notes, you'll notice that most of the July payments that come in are actually for June. So they are considered a receivable and get booked back to the month of June. So it's not that we don't have revenues coming in, it's just the vast majority are actually from the prior school year. So they're received in as a receivable for June. So you see very little revenues there. Typically, for the month of July, we might have a little bit of local revenue, maybe a couple $100 to no more than $1,000 or $2,000. And sometimes depending on from year to year when those amounts get recorded into the system, it just could be bill timing, or not bill timing, but cash receipt timing when those get entered. Moving on then to the expenses by object. Year to date, through the end of July, we're looking at 2.63% compared to last year at the same time, we're at 1.79%. Nothing out of the ordinary, just, of course, expenditures are going up from year to year, as you well know, but also that bill timing comes into play. Last year, things could have been paid in July, and this year they're paid in August or something, so there could be a discrepancy there. And then last is the expenses by function, and we're looking at for the general fund 10, we're at 4.71%. Actually, we're at, if you look up at the top, year to date for July 23, we're at 3.45 compared to 2.57 And then, Fund 27, which is special education, we're at 0.25% compared to 0.41%. And then food service, we're at 1.49 compared to 1.10. Any questions on those?
I have a foreshadowing question for next month. I'm wondering with the new start date, does that expect to kind of affect these numbers in terms of revenues and expenses next month, or is it going to be a wash?
Yeah, especially since it's the beginning of the year, I think you may see a bigger discrepancy. You know, it's kind of like the Major League Baseball season. If you get a few hits the first couple of weeks, your batting average will be pretty high. Whereas if you have a good week at the end, it doesn't really move it much. So it won't surprise me if we see a little bit of a fluctuation. At the end, it'll all shake out though.
Can you say any more about the note on the revenue report regarding Act 58 and the eliminated delayed payment?
Yeah, they used the delayed portion of our annual aid payments to July, and they removed that. Now they spread it out throughout the year, so you don't have to wait.
Oh. Right, if there's no other questions, we'll move on to the monthly employment report.
This monthly report is a standing agenda item. You can see that there has been a few changes, mostly due with, partially due with the field house staff. We oftentimes see some changes over the summer, but also we're starting to see some hiring take place for next school year. I would anticipate that those should grow by quite a bit over the next month or two.
There's no questions about that. We'll move on to the consent agenda.
I make a move that we approve the consent items.
Motion by A, the consent agenda includes minutes from the regular board meeting of July 10th, the special board meeting of July 24th. Financial reports, general fund checks in the amount of $2,859,783, and cash receipts in the amount of $27,015 for July 2023, and no donations exceeding $1,000. Any questions or comments on the items on the consent agenda? If not, let's vote. And motion passes 9-0. Next up, the personnel consent agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the personnel consent agenda.
Second, A.
Motion by Amber, second by Abe. We have a couple of resignations and one request to hire on this one.
I do, Rachel. I want to point out that we had two special education teachers resign towards the end of July, both of them for personal circumstances. And we wish them both well, and we feel bad that they're leaving, but we understand. At the same time, if anybody knows a special education teacher, our staff is doing a really good job. We have not seen much for applications. I've been reading and hearing about shortages across the state. I think on the east side of the state, I think there's a district that's looking for double-digit special education teachers. So we are going to make sure that we do whatever we need to ensure that our students receive services. At the same time, if there's a special education teacher that is interested in the position, please contact Samantha White. And we still have a couple weeks. We'll be onboarding new staff members beginning this week, but we certainly can have someone join after that as well. Sure. Also, as Rachel reminded me, there is a request to hire, and we'll be hiring Paul Larson as our environmental site supervisor. Appreciate the work that Mr. Seclusion did, interviewing candidates and discussing the environmental site, and we think this is going to provide some opportunity for expanded opportunities for our students, and we're looking forward to bringing Mr. Larson on board.
With the two special ed teacher resignations, what is the, those teachers, those positions work with support paras in various roles. How is the hiring situation for those para positions as well?
Sorry, you caught me off guard. We are full at this point. We are looking at potentially transitioning one into a teacher role, but that's in the future. So we actually, and Tony can speak to this too, had a really good pool of candidates for our special ed para positions this year. So very fortunate and hired most, if not all of them.
I guess just a general question with the special ed position. Every teaching role is specific, right? Kindergarten, art, you all, but with special ed, how do we address that if we're still short one or two the day school starts? I mean, how do we, I don't know.
Well, and Tony and Sam can jump in, but I think a big part of it is what Sam just talked about, the fact that we have such a good staff with our paraeducators. There are a number of duties that the paraeducators do directly with our students in terms of providing services, but there's also a number of responsibilities in terms of casework, evaluations, a lot of the mandatory paperwork that has to go with special education. So we do have some people in the district already that can help support that. I know Tony and Sam have also been looking at ways that we can try to contract out or hire a different combination position. But we're not going to quit coming up with ways, because we don't want to burn out our current staff members either. And our staff members have been great, and we have had some extended contracts, things like that. But there is only so much capacity, and that's why we're continuing to try to hire these positions.
Brian, can you share anything more? Larson? Yeah.
I think personnel stuff would probably be more of a closed session item if we're talking specific about a candidate.
Right, if there's no other questions, we can vote. And motion passes, 0. Right, next up, we have one item on the action agenda, which is the administrative work plan for 2023-24.
I think this is the 4th time we've had it on the agenda, and but the last time was the first time that the board saw a more comprehensive list.
I need a motion.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Rachel, thank you.
I so moved to approve.
Motion by Carl, second by Amber.
I apologize, I was so excited to get started on the work plan for this year. We're actually well underway. But last time I actually read through each item, and I'm not going to do that again. But board members, thank you again for your feedback to help create this work plan. I think it's very comprehensive. Also, the principals and members of the lead team, after collaborating, helped come up with this list. So unless there's any other questions or comments, I think it's ready for approval tonight.
I have a question. I'm reading over it pretty carefully, and then I also heard some reaction from the here. And some of the goals, it says it's report on the progress. And I was wondering if there's a way to promote those goals, to say like maybe a certain percentage or some sort of improvement or something can be, shared. I mean, it just seems kind of vague to me after looking at it more closely and calling that comes to my attention from somebody. And I was just curious about that.
Are there any specific ones that you'd like to tie a measure in with, Amy?
The one was the social and emotional wellness pillar 2. It was, I think, to improve outcomes for students, I guess there's more of a smart goal where you actually have a goal of what you want to achieve, percent or something. And then as far as the talented workforce, again, the needs assessment and that just seems like it's just kind of vague, like maybe there needs to be more meat to it.
Well, the first one you mentioned says analyze data from the SEL survey and provide a summary report to the board before June 30th on how the tool is used to improve outcomes for students. Until we do the survey, it's pretty hard to put a measurable in there. Perhaps the second year, if there's certain parts that we want to improve on, but really this is more of a baseline, I would say, so I don't know that a measurable would be appropriate on that one. The other one was which, Amy?
It's been the talented workforce.
Which one?
I think it was just the maybe the last one continue to spend on every school climate. I guess they wanted more ideas or kind of again like sample.
So that one says continue and expand upon efforts to provide professional development during the school year and continue and expand upon efforts to build a positive school climate during the 23-24 school year and report progress to the board. So really, that's more of an action item where we will provide the board a report of initiatives taken. There isn't a specific initiative listed where we would, again, measure beginning and end in terms of growth. We survey our staff every 3 years. This is an off year, so I don't know that, unless we're planning on doing a survey to measure, I don't know that would fit in there.
Don't we have a table or dashboard of measurables that we do track for outcomes? Would not some of these feed into that if this plan is approved? Then some measurables that show performance on this would show up on the dashboard.
Absolutely. I mean, our school report card would be number one,
Yeah.
but then our report card 2.0 expands beyond that a little bit. And then also like with the pillar 3 we're just talking about, like I mentioned, the staff survey every 3 years. We take a close look at the measurements on the survey.
I guess I just don't want to see anything fall for scratch, as far as making sure that, we're on top of things when we come to this plan. I feel like, maybe some people might feel left out of it, or they, there's more things going on than about that kind of thing. So I just want to make sure.
That makes sense. And I'm not opposed to measurables, just we would have to pull them out, I think, and have a baseline of where we're at and where we want to go. And I don't know that some of these have that built in.
Is it fair to say, almost every pillar has some bullet points that, that start with continue and expand upon? And by my read, kind of everything that says continue and expand upon seems like something that was probably in last year's major activity for.
Yeah, a lot of them are, this is the 5th year of our strategic plan.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these goals have been ongoing and, a lot of the heavy lifting was done in the first couple of years, but I also think these are items identified by our community and our staff. And I think a lot of these things, And that's one thing we love about our strategic plan. It's not just sitting on a shelf gathering dust. It's a continued effort. It's continuous improvement. A lot of the measurables are providing the report with the board by a certain date. Even though it may not have specific numerical data in it, the fact that it's being reported publicly is the measurable itself.
Amy, would it kind of easier concern, I guess, to have an intermittent report? Like, would that be something that would be reasonable? So we have, for example, in the bullet point you mentioned, a progress report by June 30th of 2024, at the end of the school year. Like, would it be reasonable to have a video report? And with that, the
I
track.
think you would get on a call them laying more. But if you're documenting it and going as you go, it seems like it might not be a bad idea. Maybe a review and see that we're still working toward what we want.
Yeah, and actually, we bring this plan back to the board quarterly, so not every item necessarily has a quarterly update, but the plan itself has quarterly updates, which I think that probably would be sufficient in demonstrating progress throughout the year. You're welcome.
Are there any other questions or thoughts, comments about this plan? All right, seeing none, let's vote. And that says 920. And on to the discussion agenda. First, we have our annual seclusion and restraint report.
So Tonya, Tony Plisky, our Director of Student Services, she and her team put this report together. Let me go ahead.
So this is a required report through DPI to report our uses of seclusion and or physical restraint. First off, we do have incidents in our building of the use of seclusion and or restraint. Staff are trained, and it really is a last resort. It's when all other efforts to avoid the use of seclusion and or restraint are used. And then this is really a last resort, either to protect the student themselves or we protect other students that are around that student. As you can see, I have 4 years of data based off of each school. So it's a total number of incidences, the number of students involved, and then the number of students that have that involve a student with an IEP. And so those are the required 3 points that we are required to report when you're using physical restraint and or seclusion. And then also I gave you some data. So we have 2 trainers in our district that are kind of training the trainers. So it's Bill Freeman and Tara Ryder, and they use the CPI or Crisis Prevention Institute to training to present. The majority of the training is used to de-escalate. There's a lot of information and a lot of training on de-escalation. And then the last part of the training is actually training them if they would have to use a physical restraint, like how you would do that appropriately and safely, keeping the students' safety in mind. I want to let you know that we record the incidences of physical restraint. I would say they're recorded in seconds, not minutes, meaning they use a physical restraint to make sure the student is safe. Once the student is safe, they release the student. So it really is about making sure the student is safe in school. All of those incidences do get reported to the family. They need to be, a written report is done. That written report is given to the family. It is also given to me.
Data question?
Yep.
if a student is restrained at 10 a.m.
Yep.
and let out of restraint 5 minutes later, and at 11 are restrained again, is that 2 instances?
Yes.
We know if there was of that, much of that, or?
I can tell you there were a couple.
It looks like, there's a lot more staff who are trained this school year than in previous school years, is that correct?
Yep. And then we also have two trainings during teacher in service. Additional staff. Know that you have to be trained every 2 years. So once you're trained, you need to do the training again in 2 years. So,
I want to point out on the report too, the last date at the very bottom, and Amy had pointed this out, we just didn't get it fixed yet. It says during the 2010-2020 school year, we'll get that fixed and uploaded after the meeting here tonight. I appreciate Amy pointing that out. Yeah, it's not a 10-year long report.
I'm just sort of curious about how, I assume that staff take that training who are working with more difficult populations, but what are the other, how do you decide who takes the training?
it's really, sometimes it's building driven, like they want to have so many people in their building trained. It is about many times about the students that they work with. We have principals training, teachers training, paraeducators training. Sometimes it's they've been trained before, they just want the training again. And we always say in the training, in our staff, if you are somebody that does not want to be trained and is not comfortable with this, then it's not a requirement. That will train other people that you also work with that can step in.
I'm just curious, it talks about the staff that's, looking at their needs, the prevention, and all of that. Okay, the principal, this was saying, does that include law enforcement?
Yes. Yeah, they also have to fill out a report.
Does that include?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is comparable data available for other schools?
I don't think other schools, it doesn't, we have to report this back to DPI, but I don't think it ever gets publicly reported.
What do they do with it? Like, would they come to our district and say, you don't get to see the other data, but your school is doing a lot more of this than other schools?
I don't think so. I think the requirement is that we report to the school board. We've had incidences where we've had, in the past, public requests for records, but that has gone out to the whole state as a whole.
Does this involve incidents that are maybe within an officer, or maybe a teacher before or after school hours, but is on school grounds? Like what are
It
the
would,
parameters?
yes. So, yes, summer school, yes, it would include that. It would include, yes, things that would happen. If it is truly not,
Like it was on the
if
side
it's
of
on the weekend, on a playground, and it involved a law enforcement officer, it's not in this report because it wouldn't be a school event. It would be a community event.
If you had a student restrain another student, would that be included on here?
No, because I would not call that a restraint. Meaning, in this incident of physical restraint, I might call that a behavior incident between two students.
I just witnessed one, that's why I was wondering, and if it was an assistant to the staff, and if that person would have been there, I don't know.
That I would have to look into
The
that.
person would have been.
Just curious.
In a situation like that, there would be an incident report.
There
Regardless.
should, yes, there
There
should
might
be.
not.
This report involves the staff use of physical restraint or and seclusion.
one thing that's notable about these numbers year by year and building by building is they vary quite a lot, right? There's a lot of up and down in different places. And I expect that because these are actually quite, based on the population, they're actually pretty low numbers. And so, one bad day with a couple students could lead to a large number on one of the charts.
Yep.
So just noting for myself, I guess that seeing a blip, if they're building it per year, if the actual number is fairly low, it's probably, like I said, multiple instances, a single day or related situations. So, is that feasible?
Yep.
Any additional questions?
I just wanted to know, this also includes the years with COVID data, when there were less actual school days.
Yes.
Those rests are going to be
Could be.
Yeah.
20, my memories. We all went 19, 20, but we were much.
I'm just curious on your seclusion, how, what about the average of somebody in these schools?
That varies, and it does not include kids who self-seclude. It includes really kids that, or students that are being secluded and prevented from leaving an area because for the fear of hurting themselves or others. And it varies from age to age. Like, for example, a kindergartner who's running out of the building, into the, out of the building, may be restrained and then secluded in the building, where a high school student who chooses to run in the building may be not because of their age. So all of those things kind of play into decisions on whether or not seclusion and restraint.
When there's a student involved in, one or more of these incidents that have been documented and reported, what sort of follow-up do you do, through student services to either do, behavioral assessments or follow-up?
So we are required, first, if the student with an IEP, after the second incident of seclusion and restraint, to meet as an IEP team to talk about the behavioral supports. And so that is being done. So after the second incident, we need to meet as a team to kind of talk about that. I would encourage even students with not IEPs or without IEPs, that they're meeting with families to put some things in place. The last thing we want to do is to restrain a student. When we do that, that can interrupt relationships between staff and that student. So that's really we don't want to do that. So anything we can do to put in place so that we don't have to do that is a positive.
I noticed in some buildings, looks like all of the cases for students with IEPs.
Most of them, yes.
In other buildings, I'm just basing the number of students versus number.
Yeah.
And in other cases, it's actually none of the students involved at IEPs.
Yeah.
Different number. So, is there other, I guess I'm kind of wondering, in terms of the more complex view of the students' overall, academic progress, behavioral progress, and so on, especially in the grade schools, you're talking about such emotional learning as part of the curriculum in some sense, and with time and all these things. So, is there a more integrated approach beyond kind of talking with parents and doing the report?
No, I would just say, if you have to know that when we look at these incidences, some of these incidences may be involved with a student without an IEP at the beginning of the year, but then once they get identified with an IEP, then they're an incident with the student with an IEP. So you have to know that there are some cases, because of when the student was identified, of what that was. And yes, the majority of students that are in this report are students with IEPs.
If there are no other,
One other very subtle question was occurred to me, which I realize isn't in this chart, so if you don't have the answer, it's fine. But I know that, when working with local private schools, there's often contracts with special ed teachers and other services from the district to other outside teachers.
Yes.
So this instant in those contractual relationships, would that show in the report?
Yes, but we have not had an incident. Yeah.
All right, now, there's something. We'll move on to the annual legal services report.
If you'd like to open that report up, for 22-23, we had very little legal services rendered. We had $4,500.50 to Well Riley, just for general employment, questions, board interactions, and student legal services. Really it depends on the year and kind of what scenarios or situations arise where we may have to contact them. I will say, like Corals and Brady, we use them more for our financial legal services. So you'll see back in 2021, there was a charge for them, and now nothing. They help to put together our lease for the Chromebooks and computers that we do, and we usually do a 3-year lease, and our lease was up, but it's in July of this year for student technology for this year. So those fees you'll see in next year's year. Pretty short. Any questions?
That's an easy, oh, no, okay.
When looking at these different legal offices and services, what sort of, I mean, some of these are through WASB, right? But others are these kind of firms that serve lots of different districts and some institutions. How is like either a cost comparison or kind of quality of work comparison done when we're looking at legal contractors?
Well, the district's been working with Well Riley for decades. So I think that just having the knowledge and relationships, but then also having the legal files for ongoing issues, that's pretty much what's been prioritized. Although I will say that, that's something that the group of superintendents discuss regularly. And I do know there's different options that people consider sometimes.
So do they typically serve like the entire kind of CISA area or the entire state, or kind of what's their zone of work?
Yeah, I would say it's more regional, but I think the way the world has changed, you're seeing more go statewide.
All right, if there are no other questions, we'll move on to legislative advocacy. Oh, no, there we go. I can take, yeah, so I had just asked Joe to add this onto the agenda. We removed the legislative advocacy standing agenda item, but there was a recent advocacy alert, I guess, from WASB regarding pending legislation or legislation that's been introduced that is in regard to removal of penalties for failed school. So that has been introduced by a group of legislators that are looking for additional co-sponsors, and WASB has suggested that, I guess this link is from the School Administrators Alliance, but and then there's also a link from WASB, has suggested that folks who are interested in this contact their legislators and ask them to sign on to this bill.
I did talk to Clinton Moses last week, and I'm not certain whether or not he was going to be a co-sponsor. He was aware of it. He was going to look into it some more. This doesn't necessarily have a direct impact on Menomonie right now, and what it has to do with the low revenue ceiling being adjusted. The current law has a penalty for school districts that tried to go to referendum and did not pass the referendum. And I think it left out, 19 school districts that, there were 28 that rejected a referendum, but then I think there was 19 of those 28 that didn't pass, or something like that. Yeah, where the actual revenue limit ceiling would have gone up. they were going to be disproportionately impacted. So I'm assuming that this is going to be something considered. I think it does have bipartisan support. And again, it doesn't impact Menomonie right now. And whether or not it would in the future, I think is questionable, but I think this is something that makes sense.
You know, historically, Joe, in following this for years, why that's there in the first place?
Well, I think the penalty was there to discourage districts to go to referendum.
If there's no other questions or discussion, we can move on to items related to next meeting dates, boards, committees, and reports. So, a lot of things coming up here. On Thursday, new teacher orientation, tomorrow? New teacher orientation. August 17th, that's Thursday, new teacher community luncheon. There's a lot of dates here. I guess the other relevant one is the 22nd, the all staff in service. And then we have our annual meeting on the 21st. Do you want to take one?
I do. Board members, typically we would have a meeting on the second Monday and fourth Monday. The second Monday is the regular meeting. The fourth Monday is the committee or special meeting. And with the annual meeting being held on the third Monday this year, I'm not certain that it would be necessary for the board to meet again the fourth Monday, which would be 3 Mondays in a row. What I would propose, unless there's an objection by the board, is that we kind of wait and see how it goes the next couple of days. And if we feel the need to have a special meeting, a lot of times what we've done is we've had a real short meeting before the annual meeting, since board members are going to be there anyway. The annual meeting starts at 6 o'clock, so we could meet at 5, especially considering that we'll probably have some hires that need to be approved. If we could have the board meet at 5 for a real short meeting on the 21st, I don't think we would need to meet again on the 28th. Anybody object to that idea?
Just to clarify, that would mean it would be meeting at on the 21st.
Yes,
Okay.
with the annual meeting to follow at 6. Anybody object to that idea, and then not meet on the 28th? Okay, well then, if it's okay, Rachel, you and I can talk this week, and we'll see. I'm pretty sure we'll have at least have a few hires, so we can meet on the 21st, and then we'll plan on not meeting on the 28th. No. I also would like to point out, I know there's been some questions about the first days of school. And I did send a message out to families, I think it was last week. Also, the newsletter is going to be out and people will receive that in their mailbox this week. So we have a meet and greet. And then Tuesday, August 29th, it's going to be the first day of school. The buses will run and we'll have first day of school. Now, as board members know, the first few days in August, those are technically jumpstart days, but they are very important. We are starting the school year. Legally, we cannot count those days towards truancy, so we will not be, filing any truancy for anybody who misses in August. However, it is important for students to come to school on August 29th, the first day of school.
Has there been any discussion or anybody that they're not going to be bringing their kids to school then? I mean, I just want to make sure that kids get active. Kind of something you can't really control, but if you don't want so much kids fall behind.
Yeah, there was some, I was alerted to some social media conversation. I do think that it was made pretty clear in the conversation that I saw on social media that it was important for students to attend. But frankly, we have students that'll miss the first day of school as well. Some families, they, either have family obligations or, they have certain feelings about things and, a parent can excuse their child up to 10 days in the school year. So some people will choose to do that in September as well.
With this new calendar, and this new calendar is sort of an experiment in a sense, and I think I expect it to work out quite well, but obviously it's an experiment. So I think we should think as a board about doing kind of a look back at the end of this academic year, figure out did the calendar work aggressively and hope when it was planned last year?
And when the board approved the calendar, that's a good point, Abe. We know that the first year is gonna be more difficult, you know, like you said, an experiment or starting something new. Elton, one of our neighbors, you know, they had started this a few years back, and they've expanded it even further, and I think they're actually starting school this week. So, I don't necessarily propose that we do that. Rachel's all in favor of that, but I do think it's important, and it's important for the students, and also it's important for us in terms of, trying to, you know, minimize the impact of winter weather and things like that. And frankly, it's important financially. This is an opportunity for us to capture additional enrollment through, counting the students in August and in September. So there's a financial benefit as well.
On the, Oakland PD Day last year, I know Rachel probably will make remarks maybe, but I think some of us were there to help hand out whatever, so I'm just wondering what kind of, sorry.
Okay, so I think, yeah, now that you say that, Dominic, I think board members helped hand out T-shirts, Brian.
We did, 10-year awards.
All of the years of service awards. Yeah, I know I put in the notes to board members about Rachel possibly making a few comments. But yeah, if other board members would like to attend as well, that is going to be Tuesday is the district day. Monday, all staff members will be here, but it'll be a building day. Next Monday is going to be the opening PD, and that is what date? The 22nd.
And what time?
Board members should be there about what, 7:45, 7:30? In this week's update, I'll put a message on that too. So if anybody wants to come around 7:30 on Tuesday to the high school commons, we would love to have board members attend. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second. Oh, ooh. Moved by Carl, second by Dominique.